Hi guys, bringing you a video today on some post-war items from my collection. A setup here of first issue 1958 pattern webbing equipment. I've got it laid out here as full marching order. I will look at the components individually. The post-war sort of collector's market is growing at the moment. It's become of more interest to people. This is sort of an overview. I'll look at the individual components of the equipment, what makes them, what differentiates them as the early issue bits and pieces, and hopefully you'll be able to find some of these bits at shows and things in piles of other 58 pattern webbing for a couple of pounds a pouch on eBay and places. The early components are beginning to fetch more money. So yeah, hopefully this will be useful for people and you'll be able to find some bits and pieces at bargain prices. Okay, so I've removed the pack for the minute. We'll have a look at that in just a minute separately. I'll start at the top and work my way down and then left to right at the various components. Some people will already be questioning the inclusion of the 1944 pattern water bottle and carrier. I will get to that, do not worry. So we'll start at the top with the yoke. The main thing differentiating the first issue yoke is the fact that there are no straps sewn on to guide the supporting straps of the pack. When the pack is attached, straps on the pack go over the top of the yoke, hook onto these D-rings here, and in the later type of yoke introduced, well, it's shown in the 1965 fitting instructions but not the first 1958 fitting instructions. So 1965 you get a piece added on here, certainly by that date. The early yokes don't have it, simple as that. Moving down to the left we have the ammunition pouch, the magazine pouch. I forget the official nomenclature. The biggest identifying factor on the first issue is you have these big stiffened sides on the lid. They're narrower than the third issue. There is a second type that's the same width, which I'll go into in another video. Looking for the first issue, you've got this stiffened box lid. The pouches are interesting in that, compared to others, the later type, they have a strap inside which can be shortened and tightened up, and the idea is that when you open the lid, that strap will lift the magazine slightly to make them easier to get at. Now the other magazine pouch, I'll compare this now, rather than going directly left to right, just go straight over to the other magazine pouch, has had the strap cut, so they clearly weren't, some people didn't like them, someone's hacked that off to remove that feature. So that's the ammunition pouches. They're narrower than the third type. The biggest identifier is the fact that you have this stiffened side on the lid. And I believe the second issue appeared in around 1963. A lot of the second issue components and components such as the pistol equipment seem to have originated in 1963. Certainly they're included in the 1965 fitting instructions. One thing to note, the belt does not really change. There is a nylon belt introduced in the 90s which has the rings on it as the 58 pattern does, but it's not really relevant because of course 58 pattern was not being issued in to frontline troops by then anyway. So you've got the belt basically throughout the life of the webbing does not change. The kidney pouches have stiffener in the side of the lid, so in the side of the flap, as you can see here, and there is no tab and staples to attach it to the straps. The third issue has staples and a tab that goes through them, quick release fastening, to attach the back of the pack, the back of the pouch, sorry, to the straps on the yoke. The first issue doesn't have that, nor does the second. But I will go into the second issue in another video. So these are the first issue kidney pouches. Inside you would normally have the utility strap, which I don't have a first issue one. I'll get onto the details of that in a minute when we look at the poncho roll. It's easier to describe. 44 pattern water bottle is included in this. There was no water bottle included in the initial issue of the 1958 pattern webbing. The trials version had included a square water bottle that was supposed to fit in a kidney pouch inside a mess tin half, which seems a bit ridiculous. It makes it rather inaccessible. and so some men who had access to them included 44 pattern water bottles, particularly when used out in the Far East. The 58 pattern was used out in Brunei and in Borneo to a degree anyway, not necessarily as a full set, but the 44 pattern water bottle was used to a point. It wasn't until 1960 that a water bottle was included, and I believe Khaki Web, which is a website I will provide a link to in the description, has a lot of information. Khaki Web states that the earliest known example they know of is dated 1962. So there we are. That's why the 44 pattern water bottle is included. And down here at the bottom we have the first issue poncho roll, which, as you can see here, one of the outward identifiers is it does not have the classic British style tip on the end of the strap. It has a little crimped tip, and this is an identifier of a lot of the early issue bits and pieces. Crimped tip, and if I open it up, if I can get the straps out here, unlike later poncho rolls, it only has 2 straps. The second issue one has 3, as well as having the later riveted type of tip. So that's an early poncho roll. So there we go. That's basically fighting order. That's the early components. I'll bring the pack in and we can have a look at that. Just one other thing to mention before I move on to the pack. Another way of identifying the early 2 types of pouch. Both of them hang straight on the belt, straight down, rather than being angled back, as is the case on the 3rd issue. Other than that, this show off again easier here. You can see the kidney pouches just have these 2 attachment straps. There's nothing to attach them to the vertical straps on the yoke. So there we are. Okay, I will now move on to the pack. It differs only in the details from the later, the second type. There's only 2 types of pack, and it is only details. The side pouches have a stiffener in the side of the lid, you can see there, and the straps all have the small straps on the side pouches, and the large straps closing the flap, and the cross straps all have these little tips on. Otherwise, these little crimp tips. Otherwise, it is exactly the same as the later packs. The later type, again, I believe you start to see in the mid-60s. I will put a link in the description to Khaki Web. As I say, there are more exact dates on their list of changes, and they also have the fitting instructions, which are very useful. Not only do they show certain components coming into use, but they also very neatly show how to put the webbing set together. So I hope that's been of use to people who are looking for early 1958 pattern webbing to perhaps do a British, just if you like to collect British 1960s equipment, or if you wanted to put together a uniform and webbing set for that period. Obviously quite an influential set of webbing. It was copied by other nations and used by Middle Eastern countries, Iraq notably. The Portuguese created a webbing set based on it and components of 37 pattern, and it did influence some Eastern Bloc countries as well. So yeah, obviously saw service for a long time, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Falklands, and still in use in the early 1990s. So yes, I hope you found that interesting, and until next time, bye for now.